Well, we're live, everybody.
Fantastic.
KHOP88 is on the air. Marnie joining us from Marin County, California. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin. And with us is, all right, Erik, we usually go over pronunciation beforehand. Erik, do you say the V like a V or is it more like a W?
V, it's Kvalseth.
Kvalseth.
Kvalseth. There's no, the H is silent. That's the funny part. Everyone assumes that there's some other letter in there that's missing, but the H is actually the one that you don't pronounce.
Funny. Okay.
Yeah.
From South Minneapolis, what's the ethnic root of that? What language is that?
Oh, Norwegian. I think
yeah, okay.
Minneapolis, and I'm like, I couldn't tell you. Like, probably Norwegian too, actually.
You're right in the heart of it. It's great. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us. We talked about this a little bit in the pre-show. You make your living now as a freelance. Well, tell us when people say, what do you do, Erik? What do you say?
I'm a freelance copywriter and a creative director, depending on what somebody needs. So yeah. I come up with ideas for ads and communications, events, whatever. So a little bit of everything.
I took a look at your website and I sort of stopped at grain belt and didn't go any further. For a variety of reasons. I think that I love that grain belt still exists in this stratus of like regional beers that many of them went away and just went out of business. But grain belt is like this cool, it's got a great name and a cool, that diamond logo is timeless. And I still drink it every once in a while. I do when I go to the Twin Cities. And so tell us about the work that you did for Grain Belt and if that defines sort of what you do often for most clients.
Sort of. I mean, in some ways it defines what I do for clients, I guess. Yeah. So for Grain Belt, what I did was come up with the ideas for headlines and for games, I guess, and different things that we did. We did a lot of different stuff for them. So Grain Belt, for people who don't know, is owned by Shell's out of New Ulm. Shell's is one of the oldest breweries, I think, continuously operating in the US. And I didn't work on Shell's beers at all, just the Grain Belt brand. I don't know. It's hard to say, I guess. Yeah. I mean, if you know.
Were you working for an agency at the time?
Yeah, at the time I worked for KHOP88, which is an agency in Minneapolis. And so they had Grain Belt as a client. I actually worked on the pitch to bring Grain Belt in, where we pitched to the family that owns Shell's, which was interesting in and of itself because it is truly a family business. There's 5 family members. They all have a say in everything that happens. Mom runs a gift shop. Dad is mostly retired. The one brother is the CEO. The other one is the brewmaster. And the third one is the groundskeeper.
Wow.
And so they have
that's cool.
A menagerie down there. So I think they have peacocks and animals and stuff that wander around the brewery grounds. It's a weird place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just saw the examples and stuff on your website. I mean, when you work with a client like that, do they come to you with a problem and then you come up with a solution, or do you cook up the solution in advance?
Both. So usually they come to you with the problem. And I mean, the problem can be as simple as like, we need more people to drink our beer. It could be, we need to promote this one event. We need to do whatever it is. But they're always, generally speaking, some kind of communication problem. And then depending on what the problem is, we will come up with ways. It used to be you'd come up with an ad, right? And that's not really how the business works anymore. Now you sort of come up with something that can get talked about. And so it'd be an event that people would share, or you come up with an idea that's something that somebody'd want to take a picture of and stick on their social feed, Facebook, for example. So, we do a lot of Facebook posts, come up with different videos that we could post somewhere that'll get picked up and people will share around. So yeah, and that varies a lot. So sometimes they come to us with something. Football stuff, they sponsored Paul Charchian, who is, some people probably know him. I didn't, but he's a fantasy football guru of some kind. I don't even know how you
Yeah.
become a fantasy football guru, but I've only ever cheated and had my neighbor fill out my pool. But yeah, and so in that case, then we had to come up with ideas around football. They had another one where they do brain belt beer because they'd sponsor the zombie pub crawl. So we'd come up with ideas around what can you do at a zombie pub crawl.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So tell me, is this the kind of career you worked a long time towards having, or did it kind of fall in your lap?
You didn't have to work as long to get in as I did. I'm kind of I don't know, fuck up might be a good way to put it. So first time through college, I sort of figured out that I thought advertising looked fun. It's the one industry that people seem to enjoy and have a good time going to work in. So I thought, oh, I want to do that. And I kind of asked around and they're like, oh, it doesn't matter what degree you get. So I looked at my really impressive GPA and the classes I'd finished in school and figured out that I could graduate with a history degree if I tested out of German, tested out of Norwegian, and then changed a whole bunch of classes around. So I did that and then got out and then realized that, no, you actually have to know something about advertising to get in. They're just not going to hire you, which was, to me, a little bit of a shock. I assumed, obviously, you just walk in the door and get hired. Like, that's how these things must work, right?
Yeah.
So I went out to Vermont for a year, tried to get a job in Boston, New York, Vermont, anywhere. And then finally somebody's like, why don't you just actually get an ad degree? And then maybe you'd come in and look mildly intelligent. I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. You're a genius. I could go do that. So then I went to the University of Minnesota again and got a journalism degree with a major in advertising, I guess it was. So just added another major, wasn't smart enough to get a master's or anything like that. And then as I was finishing that, I realized, oh, I want to do the creative part of this business. And so in order to do that, you need a portfolio of sample ads, which requires you to go to a portfolio school. So then I went to a portfolio school to get that together. So it took me about 10 years to get into the industry. And I did it the really slow, stupid way. So
and are you a teacher now too, or a professor?
Yeah, I'm an adjunct. I don't know if that's an adjunct teacher or adjunct professor. I think they use the terms interchangeably. I feel like if you say professor, then you sound smart. If you say teacher, then it's like, oh, you teach at a university, right? So I don't know. But yeah, so I do that, and I teach one class a semester. I keep wanting to say quarters because it was quarters when I went to the U, but it's not. It's one class a semester, and it's I teach creative strategy and concept development. So I probably just confuse people, but you know.
No, but I've been around, friends of mine work for agencies and various other jobs that I've had. You work with creative professionals. And, you know, at first, I think a lot of people are like you, they look at people who work at ad agencies and they go, well, first of all, your office is way cooler than mine. It looks really great. There's, you know, pool tables and, you know, all the work that has been done is, you know, incorporated neon beer signs, stuff like that. Seems very cool. People are having fun there and they're doing a lot of just idea generation. So you're like, well, I have ideas. Like people think I'm funny. But what they're missing is that it's really about the process of being able to reliably and consistently come up with ideas that deliver results for a company that's looking to make millions and billions of dollars, right?
Yeah. I mean, it is very much about being able to do it time and time again. There's one of my favorite sayings in advertising anyways is you really have to be willing to watch your babies die, because that's what you do. You keep coming up with ideas and you think they're great and you love them, you nurture them, you try to bring them to life, and then somebody comes and just finds some new way to kill it for you. So, and I think
like it.
A lot of people like end results. And I think if you like an end result, advertising is not necessarily a great industry. If you like the process, then I think it's a great industry, because I really love coming up with ideas, and the fact that I get paid to do that, I feel pretty lucky to do. My wife is an art director, and she sometimes finds it harder because she actually has to make the finished product more than I do. So I think she tends to focus not more on the end, but I guess the end means more to her. it's a little bit more personal in a way, whereas I'm used to getting to a certain point in the process and I have to hand it off to somebody, whether it's an art director to lay it off, a director who's going to shoot something, any other number of people. So I'm kind of used to coming up with the idea and then sending it forth and seeing what happens in some
Yeah.
ways.
And did you have any seeds of this career when you were in high school or younger?
Both yes and no. In high school, when I took a creative writing class, I think 11th grade, I realized like, oh, you can write fun things. You don't have to write like scientific stuff. This is kind of interesting. I can just make stuff up and I get good grades then. That's awesome. I like this. And I thought that was really fun. But at the same time, in 10th grade English on grammar, I got a D. So, and I think that was being generous. Even first time through college, I truly didn't know what commas were for. Like I knew they were when you took a breath, but I didn't know that there were rules related to where commas go. I had no concept of this. So even I remember freshman composition in college, I had a paper and I went all the way through and realized I had no commas anywhere in the paper. So I just went back through and added them, just arbitrary spots. When I was reading, I took a breath, comma.
By the way, since you are both writers, I wanted to share this book that I read last year that I really like called Dreyer's English by Benjamin Dreyer, who is a senior editor. And I don't really like writing books, but it's a really interesting book and he's a really funny guy. Have you heard of this book before?
No.
Yeah, me neither.
I'll put it in the comments.
So
Do you
how do I
like
find
to-
comments? Should I be in the comments?
No. You're focused on us.
Yeah.
But okay, Eric and Jason, I have a question. I'll ask Jason first. Jason, are you pro or anti Oxford comma?
Anti. In journalism, typically we do not mess with the Oxford comma. Take it out.
I am pro designer's choice. So because I feel like a lot of what I do, line breaks act as commas. So if there's a line break, you don't need a comma, in my opinion. So it kind of depends on where the and is, I guess, in a sentence. Like I'd never use a comma if there's a break there. So I'm not for or against, but kind of depends. I mean, sometimes for me, it depends on style guides too, that I have to write according to whatever the client says goes right now. Actually, I guess I finished yesterday project for Blue Cross, and they always use it. So you had to go, and I didn't, so I had to go back through and find spots and stick it in there again.
Funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the thing that like I write copywriting or advertising always fascinates me because I think like that would be a fun job. But I'm also like, oh, I'd be in way over my head. But I love that, like the layout of copy in an actual ad, or like I saw how you had those beer coasters, which I think is a really fun kind of project because I think it speaks to that sort of brainstormy, I want to come up with 100 beer coasters and then Greenbelt will pick 10 of them or whatever.
Yeah.
But also like you and an artist, and a designer can lay that out to read like you want people to read it, and the big words are the big words and the little words are the little words, and it's more fun than just straight prose, right?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways it is. I also can't really write straight prose. I like to say I'm really good at individual sentences. I don't paragraphs, even though a lot of what I do is longer copy stuff, but then I feel sometimes like I'm out of my element. But if you want ideas, I can do all day long. Headlines, great. But I'm never going to be a novelist. It requires way too much patience and time, and I want to come up with another idea. So if I had an idea for a novel, I'd probably get 5 pages in and then be done and want to move on.
But did you ever do those choose your own adventure novels books when you were younger, Eric?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, you could write one of those. I bet. So you do have children, and Karen always asks us to ask about children. So you don't have to, but would you like to tell us about your family?
Oh, sure. So my wife, Jen, is an art director. So we met in ad school. And we have 2 kids, G and Min. They're both adopted from Korea. So we've had G has been here for 8 years, and Min has been here for 5. So yeah, they're 2nd grade, 5th grade. One of them wants to talk about physics and all day long, find stuff. And honestly, like, it's one of those, like, it's a very upper limit of my knowledge of science is where he's at now in 5th grade. And my
Funny.
other son is the ultimate jock, probably. Like, he's absolutely rock solid muscle and has been since he was 3. He can sit there and just do pull-ups all day, like, does not get tired.
Huh.
It's staggering. And so they couldn't be more opposite, which is fun and frustrating at the same time.
Are there musical instruments in your house? Do your kids play, or do you play?
Yes, I'll say.
Oh.
I own a guitar because I made my kid take piano until he wanted to try something else. And I said, you have to take an instrument. And so then eventually he didn't want to do, this is G, my oldest, he didn't want to do piano anymore. He wanted to do guitar. So I said, okay, that's fine. You've started with piano. You can do guitar. And then I got a guitar so I could play with him. And then he stopped playing guitar. So I never really started. So yes, I have an instrument.
Okay.
Guitar, and no, I don't really play. And my other son was actually in a piano lesson as this started, and he practices as often as he has a lesson.
That was my track record on piano,
Yeah.
for sure. Well, that's good to know.
Are you going to read some
He's
of
our
the
piano tutor.
questions from the Peanut audience?
Great.
I have to find it. Keep talking. I
Well,
was not
Doug-
done with screening.
Doug has many questions. Doug Robertson has many questions, and one of them was, do you and your wife ever work on things together?
No, actually. We did early on a couple times, and it was honestly awful. Like, and part of it is not be like, we worked well together and came up with good ideas, and like, we actually were pretty good partners, but it would never end. Like, one of the hard parts of doing something creative is you need to step away from it. And so when we would partner on stuff, I would kind of be like, okay, we've worked on it for a couple hours. I need to walk away and do something else for a while. But that's when she'd want to talk about it. And then the exact reverse would happen. Like, at night, it would be like 8 or 9 at night. And she's like, oh, wait, I have an idea. We should do blah, blah, blah. And it would fire up again. So work just never stopped. And so I think that's kind of like, it's nice to not have the same thing. So when you talk about stuff, you're talking about something different.
Yeah.
So for that reason, it didn't really, like, we'll still, like, if she's working on something, I'll help her out, and she's, will happily help me out, but it's not, we don't really want to be direct partners.
Well, it's interesting, Jason. Facebook doesn't show all the comments anymore, but before the show, I noticed there was a question from Troy Finn. And so, Erik, we're going to press you back into school world.
Yep.
And Erik, you went to Meadowbrook Elementary with me,
Yep.
and North Junior High. And Troy Finn's question, I can't see it, it was something like, please ask Erik about football practice and the coach throwing footballs at us.
I do remember, I don't remember footballs being thrown at us. I'm sure they were. I do remember football practice because I really wanted to play football, but I was the skinny kid, so it never quite worked. Like, in 5th grade and 6th grade, I was really tall for our age, and then I stopped growing. So by 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, everyone else had caught up, and by 9th grade, they vastly surpassed me, not just in height, but in like width too. So I was kind of a useless football player after that. But I remember football practice being pretty brutal. So.
And he mentioned Coach Graff with 2 Fs. Oh yeah, so Troy Finn's back. Thanks, Troy. Troy writes, he was punting footballs.
Oh yeah, yes. I do remember him punting footballs, and we were supposed to catch them a certain way, and I couldn't. I don't know. I could never catch footballs for shit. I was a lineman, which is sad. Like, I was the skinny kid lineman. I just couldn't be more useless at football probably than I was. Troy, I actually remember, was good. Like, Troy and Dodd could both actually play football properly. Them and Steve Drone, who was my neighbor. So
Drone, that's a name that has come up a couple of times maybe on the show, and I believe you remained buds with Drone throughout high school, correct?
Yeah.
And that was a sad loss. Do you have a particular, people like sharing funny stories about Drone because he was an enormous character and an enormous man.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have particular memories of him?
Well, yeah, I mean, I lived next to him growing up, so he was my
Is that
neighbor.
right? Okay.
Yeah, and so he was actually the first kid I met when we moved to the U.S. from Norway, was Steve Drong, which is odd because I didn't know he was our neighbor, but at Meadowbrook, I arrived at Meadowbrook and I have no idea who the principal was, or maybe it was Mrs. Shank, I think was my 4th grade teacher. And so I had her both years. I had her 4th and
Oh, you did.
years, yeah.
He was a very sharp teacher. And wait, okay, I'm pausing you. What street did you live on in Golden Valley?
Turnpike Road.
What?
Turnpike Road.
Okay.
So Turner's Crossroad is the one that it used to go past Meadowbrook, and now it dead ends at Glenwood, because they built onto Meadowbrook. And so if you walked or 1 block, I guess, down Turner's Crossroad, that's where Turnpike Road started. So I was like the 3rd house in. So school was 4 or 5 houses away, kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. There's a lot of funny stories about Steve. Like child appropriate stories or inappropriate stories. I don't know.
Well, everyone can watch this on YouTube. So it is going to be, it's for YouTube.
Okay. Well, I'll just go with nice stories then. And
okay.
Good stories. Yeah. So
that's fair.
I remember one time we were in the Boundary Waters because we went on those canoe trips that Mr. James had. We did those, and I can't remember if it was after, like in college, we still went a couple times without Mr. James, obviously. And one of the trips, he was sitting there and he was talking about how he had to work out for football. And I'm like, oh, you should just bench press me. Like, just a joke. I was like, oh, yeah, that would work. How much do you weigh? And then at the time I was like 130. And he's like, well, it's a little too light, but okay. And so he sat there for like 10 minutes, literally just bench pressing me. I don't know how many times he bench pressed me. Just lying in next to some random lake. It was pretty funny. Like,
he would have done the same for you, Eric. He would have.
Yeah, it wouldn't have worked very well.
That's a good friend. Is what that is. So we talk about if you mentioned composition. I wonder if a particular teacher at Hopkins left a mark on you, or sticks with you still, if that's in English teacher, or if it's something completely different.
I can't remember names really well of teachers at all. There was a social studies teacher. I remember somebody, Ken somebody or another.
Wedding?
Ken Wedding. Yes, that's who it was.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I remember him just because it was, and we learned about Chinese communism for some reason. I don't remember what it was, but I think the person's name was Lei Fong. That was like the Chinese guy that they gave credit for doing everything great in China. Like anytime, it was this whole thing about propaganda, and he was the guy that they always upheld as the person that did everything right. See, you should be more like Lei Fong. You should donate one of your chickens to help the Communist Party, and whatever it was always these completely ridiculous, obviously propaganda stories that involved him. And I found it fascinating. And I can't remember where I don't even know if this was part of the normal class, honestly, if it was just like a tangent that I fell into a rabbit hole over. I have no idea, but it was his class. I remember him pretty well. I don't remember the English teacher.
Is that the seeds of your advertising career, learning about Chinese propaganda from Ken Wedding, maybe?
I honestly think maybe. I think it was honestly the I don't remember what the class was called though, and I don't remember the teacher's name at all for the creative writing class, whatever it was. And I just remember she was kind of, let's say, short and stout. I don't remember her name at all. But she was pretty funny, and I remember being able to, like, I just remember I needed to finish something and you'd write poetry because it was creative writing. Not that I knew anything about writing poetry, but I'm like, if I just describe all the things on my desk as though they were not the things on my desk, then I can write a good poem, I think. And so I remember doing that and then getting an A on it and thinking, wow, this is great. I can just make up bullshit and it flies. This is awesome. It was really- So,
That is a moment of realization there, like postmodern kind of awakening.
this is a thing. So,
Yeah.
I
Right.
remember that being
People
pretty
will
fun.
pay for this, maybe.
But in college, I thought I was going to go into engineering or medicine, really, because I was in all the math classes and physics, and I was pretty good at math. So I thought that's what I was supposed to do. Then I got to college and realized I actually hate doing math. I didn't really like physics all that much. So that ended quickly, which is why I sort of muddied around and eventually got my history degree.
Some of that stuff gets hard fast. Like it's
Yes.
fun and interesting in high school. And then in a college class, it's like, oh, wow, this is really complicated.
Yeah.
Like they're trying to break my brain right now. All right. So you haven't picked up the guitar during the pandemic.
No.
Is there something that you have picked up that you're doing for the last 12 months that you weren't doing before?
Probably. I don't know. It's hard to say. I do.
Yeah, nothing specific.
No, it's not like I don't have any new skill sets that were learned
Okay.
during the pandemic. I feel like so much of the pandemic for me was spent trying to homeschool kids while Zooming and figuring out how to work remotely with people. And so I feel like that was my pandemic. But I did learn that in spite of the fact that I am a teacher at the U, I am an awful teacher to my own children. That's
Yeah.
horrible. Like, yeah.
I think
You
we've
are
heard that
not-
from a number of instructors, number of educators who have been around here. They're surprised at how bad they are at getting their kids to focus and complete tasks. And
Yeah. Well, I think it's just I get so pissed off too, and it's like I just need a vent and your schoolwork is it.
right.
It's worth having.
So you mentioned also that you live pretty close to George Floyd Square, and
Mhm.
not to take this into a very serious political discussion. Tell us to
Only if you want to.
right, shut it down if you want. But
I said there was no
that's-
topic off limit, so
it's an okay. It's an interesting part of the city to live in, and it's become very political lately. I've noticed. Do you spend a lot of time? Is George Floyd Square itself physically the 38th and Chicago intersection, or 37th, whatever it is?
38. Yeah.
Is that? Are you there a lot? Do you see what's going on, and how does that make you? It's a completely different identity for your neighborhood in many respects.
Yeah, it's yes and no to that. I mean, I don't go through it a lot. I go past it probably every single day because they've shut off. They've kind of made this zone between 37th and 39th, and then I guess I can't remember what the first street is, whether it's 10th or Elliott, and then I don't remember what the street on the other side is called either. But basically, one block in each direction. They've shut off the street, so the only people that get in or out with the car are people that actually live there. And so I've gone in there a few times, but not a ton. But like I said, I go past it every day, and it's obviously changed the neighborhood a lot. Instead, 38th is a pretty major street, so it's not now. And Chicago's a pretty major street, also not now. And so people will constantly drive down our street, down 39th, because they can't go down 38th. And it's hard to tell what part of that is neighborhood traffic, that we would never have seen before, and what part of it is people that don't want to go down the 42nd. Every four streets is basically like a major thoroughfare. Is kind of the way Minneapolis is divided up. So, but yeah, it's been interesting. It's been a little weird too, because talking to kids about it, because they obviously saw the video, and my kids are people of color, right? And so I think it's been pretty hard on them to understand and to try to explain to them what it is, and how, like, in my mind, I think it's a really good thing that's shut off, and I hope they keep it blocked off. I think the fact that it inconveniences people and blocks the streets is actually a good reminder. So I don't think they should open it up and make it easy to travel through, even though it would help I guess, help the convenience of my life. But other than that,
Yeah.
not much. Yeah. So.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Chicago Avenue is really I mean, you can get on a bus on Chicago Avenue pretty much in right downtown, right? I mean,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
it's a significant thoroughfare there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I keep getting asked by friends who know that I'm from, the Twin Cities, because the trial obviously is national news, and the jury selection has
Oh, yeah,
happened, and
yeah.
they're going to begin. And so how much of the trial and what's going on at that intersection and discussions about, breaking it up. And I know there have been, the police are really trying to make something happen there. How much of that is just going on amongst your neighbors? How much of that dominates your discussion?
Honestly, not a lot. I also don't see my neighbors much because we've been kind of locked up. But I feel like when it first went down, there were people in the neighborhood that were really nervous about what was going to happen, and I will be honest, I was not one of them. Like, because there was no riot or burns down like a home. They hit businesses, and so it's one of those where I think our neighborhood actually has been spared, like not his death, obviously, but all this stuff that went down in Minneapolis didn't really hit our neighborhood because they went other places. They went down to the precinct and did stuff there. They, went up and down Lake Street. There were people coming in from the suburbs to cause trouble, and they would kind of stay along the outer edge and hit businesses there. But it didn't really come to our house. Like, we heard helicopters pretty much all summer long. Like, there wasn't a single day when there wasn't a helicopter flying overhead, either a news chopper or a police chopper or some kind of chopper. That's kind of unnerving and a little weird, but
Yeah.
especially when Black Hawk helicopters go in, because you're like, what are you going to do? Like, are you going to shoot a missile down and blow up somebody's house because you think somebody's there? Like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, some of the stuff that they bring in, I'm always kind of confused by, but I'm also not a cop, I guess, or a National Guardsman.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Or National Guards.
Well, that's it.
What do you actually say there? Is it National Guardsman? Is it National Guards person?
Guardsman. Yep. I think
Guardsman,
so.
regardless of gender. Weird.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, because Jim Sexton was on the show very early in this process, like right after Floyd was killed. And, and he just talked about how things were, really at that point, just beginning to happen. So it's interesting to have you, discussing the same things. We're about 6 months later, I guess. It may be 8 months later. So thank you for.
Well, it's also a different perspective. I may be less nervous than others. Our immediate neighbors, right after it, they had like I can't think what they called them, but like duffel bags ready to go in the event of
go bag.
Yeah, that's what they call it. Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I wasn't overly concerned, so I was more worried about a stray something, but that's about it.
Go bags, maybe they were from California. We have go bags all the time, ready to go.
Yeah.
Fires, earthquakes, riots.
I feel like now we need to get into this episode. We're going to start breaking this down. Do you have a go bag? And
Yes.
What's in your go bag? We're going to start this out now.
Yeah.
It was so funny.
I don't have a go bag. Eric doesn't have a go bag. Marnie will get into your go
I will
bag.
tell you one thing that was in my go bag. So we just unpacked my go bag because we're packing to move to Oregon. And I realized there were 2 wine bottle openers in my go bag. I think I only need one.
No, you need backup. I mean, if that first one goes down.
I mean, what if you happen upon a wine cellar in the apocalypse and it breaks? Like, what would you do?
Okay, Doug Robert, I will not read it for YouTube. Okay, well there's been some good jokes in the peanut gallery.
I can't see the peanut gallery.
Eric.
I feel like I should see the peanut gallery.
What?
Would I have to go on Facebook? I guess I could go on Facebook, right?
You don't have.
Yeah.
Okay, well, is there anything that you want to bring up that we haven't asked you about, or anything you want to ask Jason?
Or Marnie.
So the cello behind you,
Mhm.
yours, you still play?
I do play. Well, you talked in the pre-show about guitars, and you talked a little bit about guitars. Well, my daughter started playing the violin in 4th grade, and I got insanely jealous. Just insanely jealous. And so I was like, fuck it. Oh, you swore, Eric. Fuck it. I'm going to learn how to play the cello at 45. So it is my cello.
Excellent.
And when I was younger, I played the saxophone because in Meadowbrook, like they just assigned you
Yep.
instruments in the band. Were you in the Meadowbrook band, Eric?
I was in orchestra playing the
Or-
violin and realizing early on that that was a mistake.
Yeah. Well, there were some really good orchestra players at Meadowbrook. But
Mhm.
anyhow, so yes, I still play the cello, but it's very loud and fun.
I just saw that Yo-Yo Ma performed at his vaccination clinic. Like after he got the shot, that he sat and performed, and I thought, man, that's pretty good. Like that's not every day that you see a virtuoso, you know, just sitting there in a school gym or wherever he was.
Well, you know, I always, well, I'm gearing up for one more question for you, Eric. But, you know, I am not so much of a musical person, but I love music and trying to play music and listening to music. So Yo-Yo Ma's amazing. So Eric, so you don't play guitar now, you don't play violin now, but do you have, one of the questions we ask at KHOP88 is, do you have any musical experiences or like things about high school that you are meaningful to you now? Like, you know what I mean? Do you go to like any amazing concert?
Yeah, I think that one of the weirdest, best, I don't know, just strangest concerts I went to was when the Orpheum was going to shut down. Like they were going to close it, and they ended up saving it and renovating it. But so it was supposed to be like their last show was a punk show, which is a weird place to see a punk show. And I remember the Butthole Surfers were there, and I can't remember all the other bands. It was like 8 bands, and so went to see this show. I think this was still high school. I'm pretty sure it was 88. I wasn't drinking, so I didn't drink in high school, so it was probably high school because I made up for it in college. And so they came on, and at the beginning of their show, they just had a smoke machine start up that smoked out the entire theater, so you couldn't see anything. Lights came on, and I don't know how many people know the Butthole Surfers or their music, but so then you have just that loud kind of droning sound that they sometimes have their songs. You have there's some sort of movie that started playing, and so they had 2 movies playing over each other. One was like a 50s race car movie. The other one was a penile implant operation. And so there's all the smoke. People started lighting up joints. So you had kind of a contact high. Then a go-go dancer came out, and then they started singing through the megaphone. And it was just like this incredible assault of the senses. And I absolutely loved it. Like it was so fun. I probably to this date, one of my greatest experiences at any show. And it was probably, you know, like a minute long, that part, right? The rest of the show, everything else was good. But that part, I just remember being like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever created, like whatever this is. So I don't know if that's a musical experience, if that's what you're talking about.
Totally. Perfect, right. When you're still young enough to be like, this is life-changing. Like I've never seen anything like this. And I love, you know, that the period in your life when that happens is, I think, brief. Hopefully you can continue to tap into that as you get older. But it's tough. It gets trickier and trickier. So.
But I think we had great musical experiences in the late 80s in Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's very defining of many of our lives.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Barney, I think I was remembering this a while ago. Did you and me and maybe Dina Barron go see 10,000 Maniacs at Northrop Auditorium? But like when we were in college, like we came back for the summer? Okay.
We did.
All right, good.
That was us.
They came up on the radio, and I was like, 10,000 Maniacs. Wow,
Wait,
they were big for a while, and then they went away. Anyway.
Yes.
They got locked up.
Hey, Marnie.
Oh my, I'm getting ready. I'm getting ready. This show has been so great. I don't double screen because I just think that's rude for the guests.
Right.
But I'm ready. I'm so grateful, Erik, that you came on the show. And Meadowbrook kids are really, I'm sorry, Jason and everyone, but we are really cool.
You probably should have found someone else
Right.
than me if you wanted that to be the proof point.
Every ounce of my Gatewood background is.
Well, you know, it's funny. I was coming on the show. I'm like, I don't hope we are having equal, you know, we're striving for as much diversity as possible. But I'm like, are we ignoring an elementary school?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Maybe not a lot of Alice Smith representation, but I feel like we've been spreading it around.
Okay, okay, back to the calendar. Next week, we have the co-captains of the downhill ski team, Glenn Johnson and David Green, making a comeback. April 6th, Bonnie Blader and mystery guests. April 13th, the softball team. April 20th, Katie Keene and Pal. May 4th, Jim Keene and Brian Olson. May 11th, the football team. May 18th, my 50th birthday party, bring your own cake. And June 15th, Linda Schneewind and Carrie Silvernagel. We continue into year 2 with a bang.
June 15th. Wow. I know we'll get there. Well, Erik, thanks a lot for spending the part of your evening with us. I hope we didn't interrupt any other piano lessons.
No, you didn't interrupt it. The nice thing is it's all on Zoom, so either way, and this way I don't have to be tech support.
Right. All right. Well, good luck to you. Take care.
Thanks.
And great catching up with you. Marnie, good luck finding a house or whatever your next step of your move.
Thanks so much. I'll be here next week. And thank you, Erik.
As will I.
Well, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
We'll
Take care, everybody.
next time, everyone. Be safe. Wear your mask.